My name is Lauren, and I've always been the dependable one. The one who remembers birthdays, sends thank you cards, and stays after dinner to help clean up. I'm 34, a small business owner, financially stable, and emotionally... well, that depends on the day. But one thing I've always taken pride in? Showing up for my family. Even when they didn't deserve it. So when my younger sister Chloe got engaged last year, I didn't hesitate. I cried real tears during her proposal video, bought her that ridiculous wedding planning binder, and even fronted the deposit for her dream venue. $31,000 wired without a second thought. You've always been like a second mom to her. My actual mom had said back then. That comment would haunt me later. Because what I didn't know is that being like a second mom somehow meant I could be tossed aside like yesterday's confetti when the real show began. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it happened. I'd stopped by my parents' house, arms full of wedding samples, linen swatches, floral photos, a bottle of champagne I'd been saving for the final dress fitting. Chloe was upstairs. Mom was in the kitchen, stirring something aggressively. Without looking up, she said, "We need to talk." The way she said it, calm but clipped, made my stomach knot instantly. I set the champagne down. "What's going on?" She finally turned, a strange smile tugging at her lips. "You're not invited to the wedding." At first, I laughed. Honestly, I thought it was a joke. We'd been finalizing table arrangements just the week before. I'd helped her write the speech for the rehearsal dinner. "What?" I asked, my voice still halfway between disbelief and humor. "You're not invited," she repeated, and this time the smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's Chloe's decision. She wants it to be intimate. Immediate family only." Immediate family. I opened my mouth to argue that I was her family, but something about the smug set of my mother's face stopped me. "Got it," I said instead. I didn't cry, didn't yell, I just stood there. "You're not going to cause a scene, are you?" she asked, already turning back to the stove like this was just another Tuesday. "Of course not," I said calmly. "Enjoy the day." I walked out without another word, but inside something snapped. On the drive home, I kept replaying it in my mind. Chloe and I weren't just sisters. We'd been inseparable growing up. I took her to her prom when her date bailed. I paid for her first semester of college when she lost her scholarship. I'd even helped her pick out the ring for her fiancé Jacob when he asked for my help. But none of that mattered now. Because the wedding she'd been planning on my dime, I was no longer welcome. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen counter and opened my laptop. I logged into the bank account I'd created specifically for her wedding fund. Balance, $31,204.52. I stared at it for a long time. Then I transferred every penny back to my personal savings. Next, I emailed the venue. Subject line, cancellation request, Lauren Daniels. I'd booked it in my name after all. The owner, a woman named Andrea, responded within the hour, offering her apologies and confirming the release. The deposit would be held, but the remainder, nearly $20,000 each, was refundable. I closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and texted the only person who really needed to know, Jacob. "Hey, heads up. The venue's no longer booked for June 24th. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Best of luck." And then silence. I thought that would be the end of it. That they'd figure out another plan, and I'd fade from the narrative like the good girl I was trained to be. But by sunrise, my phone buzzed so hard it fell off the nightstand. 14 missed calls, 7 voicemails, 23 texts. The last one was from Jacob. "Lauren, please. I need to talk to you. You don't understand what she's done." And that was when I realized the wedding might be off. But the real story was just beginning. By the time I poured my first cup of coffee, I'd counted 14 missed calls and almost double that in texts. The quiet satisfaction I'd felt the night before had given way to a heavy stillness. Not regret. No, that wasn't the word. More like the weight of truth finally settling into place. I scrolled through the messages. Most were from Chloe. each one more frantic than the last. What the hell did you do? Call me now. You're ruining everything. Is that what you wanted? I told Mom not to tell you like that. This isn't fair. And then one that simply said, please don't do this. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't ready to unpack that mess of blame and backpedaling. But the message that stopped me cold was from Jacob. Lauren, I didn't know. Please, can we talk? That line stuck with me. I didn't know. What exactly didn't he know? That Chloe and Mom had decided to cut me out? That the venue was booked in my name? That without me, the wedding timeline would collapse? I texted back only 2 words. Call now. He did, almost immediately. Lauren, he said, breathless like he'd sprinted out of a burning building. Please don't hang up. I'm listening, I said, leaning against the counter, my voice flatter than I felt. He sighed. Look, I didn't know you weren't invited. I thought you were pulling back, like emotionally. Chloe told me you were busy with work and didn't want to be involved anymore. I nearly laughed. So she said I just ghosted on the wedding I was planning and paying for? There was a pause. I'm an idiot, he admitted quietly. And you're right to be furious. I should have double-checked. I just assumed... Yeah, I cut in. A lot of people assumed things. Jacob launched into an apology that sounded rehearsed, but not in a fake way. More like he'd been replaying it in his head all night. I thought the venue was under Chloe's name. I had no idea it was yours. She kept saying everything was taken care of, that it was a gift from a friend. I never questioned it. Did she also say the photographer was a friend? The dress fittings? The custom floral arrangements? Because those were all my contacts. And my credit card. Jacob groaned. Jesus, Lauren, I'm sorry. This is a mess. That was an understatement. I pulled everything, I told him. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. You don't exclude someone from their own contribution and expect silence. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I didn't expect. Can I come over? I hesitated. Why? Because I need to tell you something in person. And because I think you need to know the truth about why this happened. That line again. The truth. I agreed, against my better judgment. 20 minutes later, Jacob showed up at my apartment looking like he hadn't slept. His tie was missing, the buttons on his shirt mismatched, and he had that look men get when they're too overwhelmed to pretend otherwise. He sat across from me at the kitchen table like it was a deposition. First, he began, you should know that Chloe has been spiraling for weeks. She didn't want a small wedding. That was your mom's idea. She originally wanted a vineyard ceremony, the full thing you were planning. But then what? Then your mom started suggesting that you were making it all about you. That it was your show, your control, your money. She said you were overshadowing Chloe. That you were doing it to prove a point. I blinked. A point? Jacob nodded slowly. That you're the successful sister. That Chloe is just riding your coattails. Your mom kept saying that Chloe needed to stand on her own 2 feet. That this wedding was her time to shine. I felt something crack inside me. Stand on her own 2 feet? I'd carried Chloe through more storms than I could count. Mom had watched every single one and now wanted to rewrite history? She told Chloe to scale everything back. Jacob continued, that if Chloe really wanted respect, she needed to cut the umbilical cord, including you. A sick, surreal silence hung between us. You mean Mom gave her an ultimatum? She made Chloe believe it was her idea, but it wasn't. I know that now. I stared at him, trying to process it all. The cold truth settled like concrete. Mom had engineered my exclusion on purpose. She hadn't just wanted me out of the wedding. She'd wanted me erased. And for what? Pride? Control? Jealousy? Maybe all of the above. I met Jacob's eyes. So what now? He hesitated. The wedding's off. I blinked. What? Chloe's at her apartment, crying. She doesn't want a wedding without you. She just didn't know how to undo the damage without setting off your mom. I let out a bitter breath. Too late for that. I know, he said, but maybe not too late for everything else. I didn't rush to see Chloe that day. After Jacob left, I sat on my couch, staring out at the skyline, letting the silence stretch long enough to feel the weight of it. The anger was still there, sharp, simmering, but it was now braided with something else. Grief, maybe, or the realization that this betrayal wasn't a moment. It was a pattern. Still, by late afternoon, I texted her. You home? Her reply came fast. Yes, please come. I didn't expect to cry walking up her apartment steps, but I did. Just one tear, maybe two, quickly wiped away before I knocked. She opened the door like she'd been standing behind it the whole time. Her eyes were swollen, mascara smudged. She wore an old hoodie and leggings, the uniform of emotional collapse. Hey, she whispered. Hey. She stepped aside and I walked in. The apartment was dark, blinds still drawn, and takeout containers littered the coffee table. It smelled like stress and old Thai food. I didn't know how to fix it, she said, still standing near the door. Maybe start by explaining why you didn't tell me yourself. She nodded, eyes dropping. I wanted to. So many times. But every time I tried, Mom would twist it. Make it sound like I was being ungrateful, or like I was letting you run my life. You mean she guilted you into pushing me out? I said flatly. She didn't deny it. I know I should have fought harder, but she kept saying things that got in my head. That everyone saw you as the real success story. That people pitied me. That I needed to prove I could do something big without your help. I crossed my arms. So you cut me out of your wedding to prove you were independent? It sounds awful when you say it like that. It is awful. She blinked rapidly. I didn't want this, Lore. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted to get married, to celebrate something good. And I thought, for a second, maybe if I kept the peace, it would work out, that I could fix it before it got to this point. That's not peacekeeping, Chloe. That's cowardice. The words landed like a slap. I saw her flinch, but she didn't disagree. I deserved that, she said quietly. I let the silence fill the space again. I could see the girl she used to be. The one who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, who copied my handwriting, who used to beg me to brush her hair before school. That little sister was still in there somewhere. But right now, I was talking to a woman who'd made a choice. A terrible one. Mom's been doing this our whole lives, I said finally. She turns us against each other, makes everything a competition. You just didn't notice because you were the one she always picked. Chloe looked at me, wounded and ashamed. I never wanted to be the favorite, she whispered. Number, but you never said no either. Tears slid down her cheeks now. I'm sorry. I didn't rush to forgive her. Not right away. I needed her to sit in it, to feel the weight of what she'd done. But when I finally spoke, my voice softened. I was planning that wedding because I love you. Not because I wanted credit or control. I wanted you to have something beautiful, something stable, something we didn't get growing up. I know, she said, voice breaking, and I destroyed it. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that feels like a wound trying to scab over. Then she said something that surprised me. I canceled the bridal shower and the bachelorette weekend. Mom's furious, but I told her I'm pausing everything until I fix things with you. I didn't respond, just nodded. She still doesn't see what she did wrong, Chloe added. She thinks you overreacted. I almost laughed. Of course she does. She wants to talk to you. I bet she does, now that her plans are falling apart. Chloe hesitated. She said, you embarrassed her, that you made her look bad in front of the family. I raised an eyebrow. I made her look bad? By taking back my own money? Yeah, she said you humiliated her. I leaned back on the couch and shook my head slowly. She did that all by herself. Chloe wiped her eyes. So, where do we go from here? I looked at her long and hard. I don't know yet. Trust takes time to rebuild. I'll wait, she said, however long it takes. I believed her, but I also knew the road would be long, and the fallout wasn't over yet, especially not with Mom. 3 days passed before I agreed to see Mom. Not because I needed time to think. I already knew what I thought, but because I wanted her to stew in the silence. I wanted her to wonder if the silence was permanent. Chloe had kept me updated. Our mother was confused, disappointed, deeply hurt. The trifecta of emotional manipulation. She couldn't understand why I'd acted so dramatically over a simple guest list decision. Simple? I'd been erased like a smudge on a window pane, and now she was pretending it was all just a scheduling issue. When I finally said yes to a meeting, I insisted it happen at my place. Neutral ground wasn't neutral when you were the one always told to keep the peace in someone else's home. She arrived 10 minutes early. I watched her through the peephole before opening the door. Perfectly pressed beige blazer, lips painted the same plum shade she always wore when she wanted to project control. Mom didn't show up for conversations. She showed up for performances. I opened the door. Lauren? She said smoothly, as if we were old friends reconnecting. I stepped aside without a word. She took in my apartment with a brief glance. Nice place. Chic. Cut to the point, I said flatly. You didn't come to compliment my throw pillows. She blinked, surprised by my tone. I see we're skipping pleasantries. You skipped my sister's wedding. So yeah. She exhaled, placing her purse on the table like she owned the room. Look, I know you're upset, but I think this has gotten wildly out of proportion. I crossed my arms. You think I'm the one who escalated this? You canceled the venue, she said sharply. Do you have any idea how that made us look? United States. I almost laughed. She still thought of herself as the central figure in this mess. I shook my head. Mom, you told me, with a straight face, that I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding, after I spent 2 years helping plan and pay for it. You didn't just cross a line, you lit it on fire. She waved a hand dismissively. You're always so dramatic. You made the whole thing about you. The venue, the itinerary, the guest list. I followed Chloe's vision. I snapped. She wanted that venue. She wanted that guest list. You convinced her to cut me out, told her I was stealing her moment. Because you were, she finally snapped. Everyone was talking about how you were footing the bill, how generous you were. No one was talking about Chloe. It was supposed to be her moment, but you couldn't help but make it about you, like always. I stared at her. Do you hear yourself? She didn't flinch. For a moment, all I could do was sit with the weight of her words, the resentment, the bitterness. And then it clicked. This was never about the wedding, I said quietly. You've hated that I'm successful, that I don't need you. You've hated it since I left home and stopped playing the grateful daughter role. Her jaw tightened. Don't twist this into some psychological drama. I've done nothing but support both of you. You supported Chloe. I supported myself. You always think you're better than everyone, she hissed, voice rising now. You think money fixes everything. You throw it around like it buys you love or respect. Well, it doesn't. It just makes you lonely. I stared at her, my heartbeat suddenly slow and steady. Mom, I said, I didn't need my money to buy love. I gave it freely. What I wanted was acknowledgement, and what I got was betrayal. She looked away for the first time unsure. I saved for that wedding for 2 years, I said. Not for recognition, but because I wanted Chloe to have something magical. I've paid for everything from her textbooks to her groceries, and I never asked for a thank you. But being excluded from her wedding? That wasn't about her. That was about you. The silence between us stretched like a rubber band pulled to its limit. Finally, her voice dropped. Maybe I was wrong, but I didn't mean to hurt you. You meant to diminish me, I corrected. You meant to make sure I knew my place. And now you're dealing with the consequences. She looked at me then, really looked at me. And for a split second, I saw something close to remorse. Or maybe just the realization that she couldn't control me anymore. I suppose the wedding's still off? She asked quietly. I don't know, I said truthfully. That's up to Chloe and Jacob. But if it happens, it won't be the one you planned. She stood, smoothing her blazer. You've made your point. No, I said. Life made the point. I just stopped cleaning up your mess. She left without saying goodbye. And I sat on my couch for a long time afterward, heart pounding, staring at the space she'd occupied, finally free of her shadow. I didn't hear from Mom after that confrontation. Not a text, not a call, not a passive-aggressive forwarded email about family values. Just silence. And honestly, it was the most peaceful week I'd had in years. But Chloe, she kept showing up. She came by the following Saturday with homemade muffins that were somehow both heartfelt and undercooked, and sat across from me at my kitchen island like a kid waiting for a verdict. I've been thinking, she said, hands wrapped around her coffee mug, eyes puffy from what I guessed were long, guilt-ridden nights. About starting over, about the wedding. I waited. I didn't want to fill the silence for her. She needed to learn how to sit in discomfort. I want to replan it, she continued. Small, honest, no drama, no performance, just the people who matter. Sounds nice, I said, sipping my coffee. Who's paying for it? She flushed. I don't want your money, Lauren, not this time. That caught me off guard. I don't mean that as a rejection, she added quickly. I mean, you've already given so much. This time, I want it to be ours, mine and Jacob's. I want to build something that's ours from the ground up. I looked at her, really looked at her. It was the first time I'd seen my sister as an adult. Not as the girl I'd always protected or the woman who had betrayed me, but someone in between. Someone in the middle of becoming. And what happens when Mom pushes back? I asked carefully. Chloe didn't blink. She already has. She told me if we go through with it without her input, she won't attend. I raised an eyebrow. And? She smiled weakly. And I said I'd send her pictures. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Chloe laughed too, and for the first time in weeks, it felt real. Not strained, not forced. Just sisters, rebuilding something that was nearly lost. I'm proud of you, I said. She swallowed hard. That means everything. We spent the next few hours sketching ideas on napkins and scrolling through venues. Local ones this time, affordable ones. She didn't ask me for a dime, and I didn't offer. Not because I was holding a grudge, but because I finally understood that stepping back wasn't abandonment. Sometimes stepping back is love, too. A few days later, Jacob invited me over. Not Chloe, just me. I assumed it was about wedding logistics. But when I arrived at their apartment, he handed me a glass of wine and a carefully folded piece of paper. What's this? I asked. Our new budget. I scanned it. A modest guest list, a small garden ceremony, a backyard potluck-style reception, and a $5,000 line item labeled Surprise Honeymoon Fund. I know it's not Tuscany or a beachfront resort, he said, but we want to start our marriage with something that's ours. No strings, no guilt. It was simple, humble, and oddly beautiful. Jacob looked at me. I also wanted to say thank you for the way you handled everything. You could have blown it all up. I gave him a half smile. Didn't I? Not really. You just exposed what was already broken. We toasted. To honesty, to boundaries, to not losing people we love just to keep someone else comfortable. Then he cleared his throat. We'd like you to officiate the ceremony. I froze. I mean, only if you want to. He rushed on. You're not just Chloe's sister, Lauren. You've been there through everything. You know us. You believe in love when it's messy, when it's hard. I stared down at the glass in my hands, trying not to cry. I didn't expect that. Didn't even realize how much I'd needed it. Not the gesture, but the affirmation. That I was still wanted. Still seen. I'd be honored, I whispered. That night, I lay in bed thinking about all the ways this story could have ended. I could have walked away. Let the bitterness calcify into silence. Close that chapter for good. And honestly, no one would have blamed me. But instead, I chose to stay. Not to enable, not to rescue, but to witness. To show up on my terms. Because healing doesn't always mean going back. Sometimes it means choosing forward. Together. The morning of the wedding, the sky was perfect. Not too bright. Not too overcast. Just soft, golden light filtering through early spring leaves, like nature had decided to offer a quiet blessing. The garden venue Chloe and Jacob had chosen wasn't fancy, but it was beautiful. A modest space tucked behind a local bed and breakfast, with climbing roses on wooden trellises and rows of white folding chairs lined up under a canopy of oak trees. I stood off to the side, holding my handwritten notes, heart surprisingly calm. It was almost funny. After all the chaos, all the drama, here we were, back to something so simple. So human. Two people in love, ready to build a life. No grandeur, no spectacle. Just truth. Chloe looked radiant, in a flowing ivory gown that she'd found secondhand and altered herself. Her hair was in soft curls, a daisy tucked behind one ear. When she caught my eye from across the lawn, she gave me a small smile. It was the same smile she used to give me when she passed me secret notes in school, full of nervous excitement, asking silently, "Do I look okay? Am I doing this right?" I nodded and her smile deepened. Yes, she was doing this right. The guests trickled in slowly. Friends from work, college roommates, a few aunts and cousins. It was intimate just as promised. And noticeable in her absence? Mom, she'd made good on her threat. After weeks of tension, whispered guilt trips, and an ultimatum delivered over Sunday brunch. If you go through with this wedding without me, don't expect me to show up for anything ever again. Chloe had called her bluff, and Mom hadn't shown. There were no tears about it, no breakdowns. Just a collective exhale from everyone who had been bracing for the storm that never arrived. In her place stood something else. Peace. I stepped forward when it was time. Cleared my throat. Chloe and Jacob stood hand in hand before me, the soft rustle of the breeze their only background music. Today, I began, isn't about perfection. It's not about centerpieces or seating charts or flower walls. It's about choosing each other, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. They listened, eyes fixed on one another. It's about knowing that love is sometimes messy, sometimes uncertain, and still deciding to show up, to say yes, again and again. I looked at Chloe then. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. You've taught me a lot, both of you. About forgiveness, about honesty, about how family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by the courage to rebuild what others tried to break. I saw heads nodding in the crowd. Even Jacob's father wiped at the corner of his eye. You two have faced more than most couples face before saying I do. And yet here you are, not because everything was perfect, but because you chose to rise above it. When the vows were exchanged, they were short, imperfect, and beautiful. Jacob promised to always make space for Chloe's voice, even when she's quiet. Chloe promised to never let fear, or anyone else's expectations, dictate the life they build. They kissed. The guests clapped. And for a long moment, I just stood there, watching as my little sister and the man who'd become her partner walked down the aisle to the sound of laughter and love. After the ceremony, there was food. Music from a Bluetooth speaker, folding tables covered in mismatched tablecloths and homemade bundt cakes. Someone's toddler danced with a plastic tiara on her head, and someone's dog ran off with a dinner roll. It was chaotic. It was real. And I wouldn't have changed a second. Later, Chloe found me under the string lights, a plate of cake in her hand. "I never said thank you," she said, nudging my elbow. "You've said it," I replied. "Not enough." She looked away for a second, then added, "I've spent so much of my life trying to earn Mom's approval. I didn't even realize how much until I almost lost you." I put my arm around her. "You didn't lose me. You just took the long way back." We sat there for a while, side by side. Sisters again. As the party wound down and guests hugged goodbye, Jacob raised a glass in my direction. "To Lauren," he said, who reminded us that setting boundaries isn't the same as burning bridges. Sometimes it's the only way to find your way home. Everyone toasted. I felt the eyes on me. Warm, grateful. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't shrink from them. Because this was mine too. Not the wedding, not the spotlight, but the quiet knowing that I had stood my ground, spoken my truth, and still made room for love. Mom never did reach out. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. That part of the story is still being written. But what I do know is this. Some families are made by birth. Others are rebuilt by choice. And sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one that refuses to disappear, even after it's been dismissed.